So we will begin really the overview of the Bible. And last time I wrote Introduction to the Bible, Introduction, and then I realized that I could have been a little bit smarter. Sorry, I wasn't. So we will have an overview of the Bible. So the last lesson could have been overview, introduction, but now it's going to be overview Genesis. So you have your handouts. I am not going to go through everything because it's pointless. That's for you. That's for you to take home to to play with that, to see what does make sense, what doesn't make any sense. Comparing to Lutheran Study Bible that usually is kind of floating around here, there are a few differences. If you will open the Lutheran Study Bible, they will say that it is impossible to determine the beginning, the date when everything began. I don't know why it's impossible for them, because it was possible for many, many generations of believers. So I gave you the date of narrative, which is different sometimes. We will have it in different books, the date of narrative and the date of writing. Okay? The date of writing is when the author sat down and wrote whatever he wanted to write. The date of narrative is that when did that happen? When the events in the book happened. And depending on how you count, you end up with either 4004 BC, the beginning of creation, or if you go into very famous Kyle and Delitzsch commentary, kind of like a standard exegetical commentary. I probably should have bring you that. I'll bring it next time, next Sunday. Just bring you a volume. It's like a 10-volume, collection for the whole Old Testament. So if you read them, it's, what is that, 4158 BC. That's the beginning of creation. Okay? And then roughly it goes through 1600 BC. That's where, more or less, give or take, that's where Jacob dies. Okay? And then Joseph dies. Now, concerning structure, the basic structure is we have introduction, the creation, the story of creation, and then we have 10 stories. Each of them in the Bible begin with Hebrew word Toledoth, which comes from the verb to beget. Therefore, it's like beginnings. Probably the most loosest translation would be the sons, the children of, or something that happened of. Not happened in the sense of events, but something that was begotten by. Okay? So the first story, the Toledoth of heaven and earth, so it's very interesting. The children of heaven and earth, and who do we read about in that story? Actually, Adam and Eve. It's very interesting. It's not about the earth itself, it's not about heaven itself, it's about Adam and Eve. And then you have Toledoth, or beginnings of Adam, and then you have a list of his children through third son, Seth. And so on and so forth. That kind of explains why most of the Toledoths are named after fathers. Okay? It's like the Toledoth, there is no Toledoth of Abraham whatsoever. There is Toledoth of Terah, his father. And then here's a story of Abraham. Okay? That's a very standard. But what I would like to share with you is remind you the story of creation. That's kind of important to know and to have in your head, because it will be repetitive in the Bible very, very many times. The sequence of 7 events and the way they will be spread in the sense of the formation, filling, and lightning or glorification, that will be an important thing too. So, let's go into creation account. Creation account we have in to chapter 2, verse 3. Okay? And we can have, what I found, the way to kind of remember that is what we can have is an introduction, and then we have a song with 2 stanzas each, okay, that goes through similar pattern. Let's open Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning, okay, while you open it. Sure, do you know it by heart, or you just read it?
In the beginning, God created heaven and earth.
Okay, and then verse 2.
Without form and void. Let there be life. No,
that's verse 5.
3. That's 3. No, that the earth was formed and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water.
Okay, so initial creation, the earth has 3 important features. What are they? It is formless. So we have a challenge, not the problem. We have a challenge of form. We have a challenge of emptiness. And it's dark. Exactly. Okay? That's how God creates. We have a form, then we fill it, then we lighten it or glorify it. Okay? Those of you who build their own houses, I have never ever have seen a person who would bring all the furniture on the construction job site, put it in place, and then build a house around it. Okay? Usually, you first have an idea, okay, and we'll go to that in a second. You have an idea, you have a plan, then you lay your foundation, you put the walls, you put the roof rafters, you cover the roof, you put the windows, doors, wall, I mean everything. Then you bring the furniture in. Okay? So you first form it, then fill it, then you begin to live in that, and that's what glorifies your house by word and prayer. Okay? I mean, you can also invite a pastor for a dedication service, but that's a different story. Okay? But my point is, you know, that's 3 steps that we follow. Why do we follow them? Well, what a surprise. We are images of God. Okay? We do that because He does that. Okay? Now, as I said, you know, when you want to build a house, you first want to have a plan. So, the first day, you have initial light. Okay? This light has nothing to do with sun, moon, and stars. For 3 days after, first, second, and third day, we'll come to that, the whole creation was able to survive with no heavenly celestial things. Okay? But now, after initial light, that's day number 1, we will have 2 stanzas. And you have this chart. Okay? So, day 2. We have a form, and that's firmament. Okay? What's the firmament?
Earth.
It's what?
Sun. Earth.
Something that divides.
Horizon.
And expands.
It's a, yeah. But see, the word which is there is something hard as a, like a, oh, I'm blanking on the word, like a shield. Okay? So, so something hard which divides our living space. Basically, it gives the form to where, or boundaries where living, where creation can be, and something that beyond the firmament, where only God is. So, when astronauts, and it was very popular in the Soviet Union, you know, astronauts went to space, didn't see God, and all of this stuff, okay? The thing is, and I think I've used that imagery, even if you watch Star Trek, space, the final frontier, you know, however far you fly, I mean, God bless Elon Musk, you know, hopefully we will occupy Mars, maybe, or whatever. Don't care really about that. I think we have too many things here to handle before we need to go to Mars. Unless you want to escape, you know, so from those troubles. But, seriously speaking, whatever we have is under the firmament. Whatever we can track. The firmament is not necessarily a space divide. It's a realm divide. Okay? It's divide between where created things are and beyond or above, better using the biblical language, above the firmament is where only God dwells. Okay? Sometimes we have glimpse of what's going on over there. Like in Isaiah 6, you know, when Isaiah saw the glory of the Lord. Like in Revelation, some other places, you know, like a descending of the chariot of glory to Ezekiel. So there are some like windows and you know, that we can kind of look through. But that's important to remember. So day 3. What happened on the 3rd day? I probably use a green, that would be better. Green. So on the 3rd day, we have 2 things. First of all, separation of the water and the land. But land is immediately filled. What land filled with?
Grains and trees.
Yes, thank you. Grains and trees.
Lovely.
Okay? Okay? Now, think about this. What do you make out of grains?
Food. Food.
What kind of food?
Bread.
Bread, exactly. What do you make out of fruit trees?
Fruit.
Juice.
Wine.
Oh.
Juice, but you know, if you are in a hot, you know, climate, it's not going to take wine. I mean, it will take very short time to turn it into wine. Okay? So think about this. The theme of bread and wine is with us, beginning from the 3rd day of creation. Right here. Okay? And then we have it. It's not only when we find Jesus and he took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, gave to his disciples. It's not only there. We have so many important places where it is kind of glanced at. If you don't mind, let's jump for 1 second. I will show you a simple example. In Proverbs, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, verse 16. Okay, Proverbs 16. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. Okay, what do you plant in the field? Grain. Therefore you get bread. But the vineyard, you have what? Grapes. And you have? Wine. Okay, so bread and wine, that's an important theme. Now, form, emptiness, we solved that. Now we go into darkness. What happened on the 4th day?
We have light.
We have the light. What kind of light?
Bright.
We have sun. I should have probably used orange. Moon. And stars. Okay? So not a surprise. It didn't happen on the 3rd day. It didn't happen on the 5th day. It happened on the 4th day. Why? Because you need to have form, emptiness. You solve the emptiness. You feel it. And then you go into darkness. So these first, what did I say? This first part of the song, stanza, so is with, I know in the chart I said not a living realm. So it would be better to say realm of not living things. Okay? Because when we go into 2nd stanza, that's where the living things are. We very often tend to believe that it's only humans who are living creatures. God has a very special relationship with humans. And we've talked about this last time. This is such an anthropocentric view that sometimes you want to avoid. Okay? Yes, humans are special, but if you read carefully in the Bible, birds, fish, animals, and humans are called living souls. The words are identical. Okay? So we have a living realm. The realm of living creatures. And again, the first thing is we need to solve is the form. That's why, who is created on the 5th day?
Birds and fish.
Birds and fish. Guess why?
Because the people have to have something to eat.
Yes, probably, but there is another idea. They mark the boundaries of our living. We do not live below fish, and we do not fly. I mean, yeah, now we created planes, but in the biblical world, we do not fly above the birds. Okay? That's our realms. That's our boundaries. That's creating form. Okay? So we have fish. I mean, it doesn't look like fish, but okay. Something like that. And we have birds. You know, with wings. Okay? So we need to have boundaries. And then we fill those boundaries with animals on the 6th day. Okay? And also boys and girls. I mean, one boy and one girl first. And then we have Sabbath.
Rest.
Yes. And he glorified it. So the challenge of darkness for human beings is not necessarily a physical light, but a spiritual light. That's why we have the day of glorification. Okay? Sabbath, rest, is not in the sense that we can lay on the couch the whole day and, you know, holding Guinness in one hand and something else in the other hand, saying Guinness is good for you. Guinness is good for you. I mean, I was paid for that, but still, Guinness is still good for you. But my thing is, you know, it's not about being lazy. It is about doing something very, very separate from a regular days. You know, God says you work 6 days, and meaning that you work to kind of improve your own condition. Then you have a separate day when that you dedicate to the Lord, and it's much more outward putting. You know, it's much more about what God is doing in the realm of the whole earth. Okay? It's not only work with hands, it's to work with praise, with your songs, and with your prayers, and that's how you change the world. Okay? Now, there are some themes. Yes?
Question. What is KD up on the top?
KD is Kyle and Dalish. Sorry, that's, you know, I have it here. Yeah. So it's two guys who came up with a very good second part of 19th century. Two German theologians who came up with commentary on what we call Old Testament. There are some themes, and I tried to show you that the light is, the godly people are like a light. There are family patterns, very prominent in the book of Genesis. Of course, the theme of sin is there. And look at that. I will show you in a second. Sin influences not only like somebody's soul, but it breaks boundaries, it works against forms, it works against feeling, it works toward emptiness, and it goes toward darkness. Okay? Therefore, I mean, there are some characters here that I believe somewhat important, but if you turn the page, I would like to go through the whole book of Genesis using this kind of creational paradigm. Okay? So hopefully this chart will help you. Again, we have a story of initial creation from 1:1 to 2:4. No, sorry, 2:24. Okay? As I've said more than once, that verse 25 in chapter 2 should have belonged to the next chapter, because that states that Adam and Eve were what? Were naked, and the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. That's the beginning of the story, which ends in 3:7, where it says that they knew that they were naked, and they sewed the fig leaves, and they made themselves
Clothes.
Yeah, clothes or loincloths. Yeah, okay. So, the thing is, now think about this. In the context of form, emptiness, and darkness. Now we will have 3 stanzas in the whole book of Genesis. Yes, Adam did such a boo-boo that still influences all of us. But within these three things, what he was mostly fighting with the form or the boundary, with emptiness or with darkness. What he was going toward, Adam. Okay? I think he was going after form because he trespassed. God said, here's the tree, do not cross the line. Okay? Do not come here and eat it. You can cross any other borders, you can be in any other space, but not here. So here's the story of Adam. Okay? Now, the second story in chapter 4, that's mostly 3, this is 4. The second story in chapter 3, we have Cain and Abel. One guy kills the other, so other one is no more. Again, what is that fighting with? Forming, feeling, or darkness?
Dark.
It's actually a feeling, because he kills the guy and guy does not exist. So the earth cannot be populated. So earth, after killing Abel, Cain made earth emptier.
Yeah.
Okay? Got it?
Uh-oh.
Okay? Now, chapter 5 and 6, mostly 6, is we have struggled actually with spiritual darkness. When daughters of Cain influenced sons of Seth in such a way that the Holy Spirit was grieved. Okay? So that's what leads to flood. Okay? So, again, Adam's sin is very grieved and it's influential to the rest of the human history. But in reality, we need to always pay attention that it took humanity, initial humanity, 3 steps to step away from God. Okay? They broke the boundaries, they began to kill each other, and they got into spiritual, if you want, adultery with people that they should not have connected with. Okay? Now, we have a flood. Now we have another story. Another story, the first important story that begins here in chapter 9, is the story of Noah's sons, but you know, the main guy is Ham. What does he do? Where did he find, you know the story, okay? Noah had a vineyard, he had tasted the wine, and he got, you know, happy, let's put it this way. Never ever, never ever use the story of Noah to fight against alcoholism. It's not about that whatsoever. There are other passages in the Bible saying that alcoholic drinks are dangerous and you have to be careful. Noah didn't do anything bad. He was by himself in his tent. He was covered by his tent. So when Ham comes in, what is he breaking? What kind of thing he breaks? Trespass. So he breaks through the form. Okay? So it's Noah, son. Okay? And that's why he has to serve. Now, 2 other descendants, again Ham, and actually, goodness gracious, Japheth, yeah, the good son of Noah. Those 2 guys got together, okay? And we have this story at the Tower of Babel. What was their main idea? Why did they want to build the Tower of Babel?
They wanted to get to heaven and see God.
They wanted to get to heaven and see God. There is one more important thing. What they tried to avoid. What did God tell them after the flood? What did God tell to everybody? Go and spread. Okay? And they wanted to be in one place. So these guys are fighting with emptiness. Okay? Okay, and now, beginning with chapter 12, we have story of Abraham. And it's very interesting. Abraham comes from one place. We probably need this map. Okay. I'll show you, as I did before, how you can draw the whole Near East within like 5 moves. Okay, that's your Mediterranean, that's your Galilean Lake, Jordan, Dead Sea, Persian Gulf, Tigris, Euphrates. Right there. Okay, so he comes from Ur. It's roughly here. He goes to Haran. Okay, Abraham. And then he comes here. So wherever he goes, he is from the beginning of our story. We know almost nothing what happened with him in Ur. Okay? We know most of the stories that we have about Abraham is his travel here, or he will go down to Egypt. So wherever he is dealing with other nations. Remember what happened here. You have sons of one clan and daughters of another clan, and they have to interact properly or not properly. Okay? The cool thing is, actually, Abraham does it properly. He does it in such a way that he converts many people around him. For example, in chapter 14, there is a famous story of him dealing with Melchizedek. Okay? So there is this righteous guy that brings him gifts. Okay? We have other stories where king of Philistines is encouraged to talk to Abraham because Abraham will pay for him. Okay? So that's important. So we need to see the story of Abraham in the light of relationship with other nations. Not only as his personal story. Where his first son comes from. Okay, let's start this way. What's the name of first Abraham's son? Ishmael. Who is his mom?
Hagar.
Where she comes from? Exactly. Be more precise. She actually comes from Egypt. Okay? So even his first son is somewhat not a pleasant story. His first son is a reflection upon what happened before the flood. He's almost slipped, but God corrected him in the proper way, and it turns out as, to be a final blessing. Okay? So we always need to read his story in the context of his relationship with other nations. Now, who do we have rest? Now we have Isaac. And Isaac sins against the form. Why? Because even before his kids were born, he was told that he has to, not prefer, but he has to understand that Jacob, his son, would be the one who will carry on the covenant, not the Esau. Okay? And for more than 70 years, he was fighting with that. He was fighting with God's formation of the covenant. Okay? Now, we have story of Jacob. Sorry. Okay. How many sons he has?
12.
Okay. 12 plus at least one daughter, or actually few daughters, but not one we know by name, Dinah. Okay? That's why he is here. Okay? That's why he is fighting with emptiness in the proper way. And then, who goes into other nation and converts them and brings the blessings to all the land? Joseph. Okay? Now, I need some, I don't have a, okay, I have one. Okay, cool. So, this is a total disaster, this is total disaster, this is a disaster.
Big disaster.
This is bad, this is bad, this is okay. This is bad. Now look at that. Slowly but surely, actually, book of Genesis shows us that the humanity, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, of course, not by itself, not because of technology, not because of progress or anything like that, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And it's very interesting that it is Joseph who, about whom there is a statement at least twice, he has a Spirit of God. Okay? It's very interesting that, as I said, under guidance of the Holy Spirit, humanity can progress positively. And actually, Genesis ends with happy ending. Okay? It's almost Hollywood. Or vice versa. Hollywood took it from the Bible, actually. Because if you read many other stories of ancient Near Eastern stuff, like Odyssey, okay? Everybody knows the story of Odyssey? That the guy is coming to, Odyssey came to the war, and then they had to escape from the war, from the Trojan War, and all things he tries to go home. And when he comes home, what happens?
Disaster.
Did they live happily ever after with his wife? No, they didn't. Everything goes south. Okay? So those of you who live in the Rio Grande, don't go south. Just kidding. I know. I had to bring it up. Sorry. I had to bring it up. So, but seriously speaking, so we see how it can be done. Again, it's not perfect, because even with the third stanza we have something sour, and relationship of Isaac and Jacob, we do not have time for that, but it's a very complicated and sad story. Just one thing for you. Let's go to chapter 37 of Genesis. Chapter 37 of Genesis begins the story of Joseph. Okay? So we have Jacob, who has a 17-year-old son. And for whatever reason he prefers. We can talk about that. Parenting techniques. I'm not going to go there. Important thing is, brothers, one way or another, got rid of Joseph. Yes?
Right. Yeah.
By the end of the chapter, we see that Jacob is broken-hearted. He is like devastated. Life cannot be worse. Now, let me tell you something very interesting. Isaac is still alive. He will live for another, at least, 13 years. If we put chronology together, Isaac is still alive. Maybe it was not somewhat important, but I've never ever seen in the Bible, I think it is important, but I've never ever seen in the Bible that Father Isaac comes to Jacob to comfort Jacob on the loss of Joseph. Never happened. Okay? Even though Jacob and his brother Esau comes to the grave and they bury the father, yes, so the respect goes vertical, goes upward. But the connection between Isaac and Jacob are not really a great one. So that's why I'm saying this is somewhat a sour story. But at the very end of Genesis, we're coming to the very, very happy end. Because the Egypt, the land that provided bread for the whole world, is flourishing. Why? Because there is a guy who is led by the Spirit of God. Okay? That's all for today, folks. Questions or comments?